Hey there, this is Matt once again. Welcome back to another review, this time of Steel Dawn. Now this is thanks to my good friend Efrey. One final review for the Patrick Swayze marathon I did a while ago. This came out in 1987, the same year as Dirty Dancing. And overall, it's a good, decent, little bit of an underrated flick. No one really ever talks about this flick. It's a post-apocalyptic film, supposed to take place, I guess, after World War III. A lot of it's in the desert. You tell there's some inspiration from The Road Warrior and other films of that nature. Patrick Swayze stars as a character named Nomad. He's a wanderer. And you get little inklings that he was a soldier, that he had a family that was killed. But he wanders the desert, meets a former friend, a mentor, which I believe was the same Asian guy who mentored Michael Dudikoff in American Ninja. I forget the actor's name. But then he's killed. Swayze sees this and wanders around some more and comes across this irrigation farm where Lisa Niemi, who I believe became his real life wife. I could be wrong, but I believe that was her. Her and Brian James from 48 Hours, another 48 Hours, the horror show with Lance Hool. One of the rare times that Brian James plays a good guy. And he kind of looks like Hulk Hogan in this. He's the foreman there. Swayze gets a place to stay, food, or if he helps out. He also bonds with the little kid there, played by the director's son, which the little kid was a little bit wooden. He was wooden, not a little bit, he was wooden, but he wasn't annoying either, so I could deal with him. And there are bad guys that want the irrigation farm and want the water because at the Road Warrior they wanted gasoline, and here the bad guys want water. Now the bad guys, you have Anthony Zerbe, you might remember from License to Kill with Timothy Dalton. I remember him from See No Evil, Hear No Evil, where you find out he's the main villain and he's also blind. It has a fun little scene with Richard Pryor involving that. And then one of his main henchmen, like people he hired out, is Christopher Niemi, who I remember from a Chuck Norris film called Hellbound, which he was the main villain. I believe he was the villain in Street Night with Jeff Speakman. I believe so, I could be wrong. But that guy always had a right face and voice for a villain. Also one of the henchmen, if you notice, is Arnold Vosloo from Hard Target, Darkman 2, Darkman 3, the Mummy films. I barely remember those Darkman sequels, but Arnold Vosloo, he's a good character actor. I'm not positive. I think he might be dubbed in this movie because I hear his voice. I'm like, that doesn't sound like the guy. I don't know. Maybe he wasn't, but it sounded like it. And the movie's like 90-some minutes long. Like I said, it's a bit like The Road Warrior, but instead of car chases, it's fight sequences, mainly sword fights. And overall, I like the film. Number one, Swayze does a good job. He really does show, once again, that he good leading man. He has the charisma. He has the it factor. He handles the fight scenes very, very well. Maybe because he studied ballet dancing, so the fluidity of the body helped in those sequences. And it was definitely a nice precursor to what we would see in Roadhouse. The sword fight scenes, there's a couple, but especially the one at the end where he fights Christopher Niemi, really good sword fight scene. It's pretty lengthy. There's a lot of wide shots, so you can tell that the actors are really doing it. And it was a little bit violent. Nice choreography of the sword fights. And it's not like wall-to-wall action fight scenes, but when it happens, you just see that Patrick Swayze, I know he didn't want to do the same type of film over and over again, but I kind of do wish he went into a career of martial arts films. Because this and Roadhouse shows that he was very capable of doing that. There's some decent looking shots, like when Swayze is wandering around in the desert. He walks by this big, huge ship that just happens to be out there in the desert, like a abandoned ship from long ago. The supporting cast, like Christopher Neame, Brian James, Andy Zerbe, they're capable actors. It was interesting to see Otto Vosloo in there. Like I said, Swayze definitely has that factor of being a leading man and an action guy. The score is alright. It's actually by Brian May, who worked on the Mad Max films in the music department. He does an okay score here. The direction is fine by Lance Hool. Now, Lance Hool only did a couple films. I think like 3 films. One of them being Missing in Action to the Beginning, which is actually my favorite Missing in Action film. And might be in my top 5 favorite Chuck Norris films. I think that's a pretty underrated film. Maybe one day I'll do a Chuck Norris marathon and explain why, but I really like that movie. He did that one, this one, and I forget what the third one was. Well, I mean, it's too bad, because the 2 films I've seen him direct are not bad at all, in my opinion. Now, do I have issues with the film? Sure. The love story between Swayze and the girl, I didn't really care a whole lot about. I mean, it wasn't the worst thing ever, but it's like, I don't... It's the least interesting part of the film to me. Certain weird things, like well, one good thing I'll note, it starts out with a bang, where Swayze fights these guys who burrow themselves in the sand as if they were the creatures from Tremors. But they burrow in the sand, and Swayze has a fun action scene where he kicks these guys' ass, cutting throats, stabbing them in the ground. That was an entertaining sequence. But there's a couple weird things, like Swayze's character has a tendency to meditate, which is fine. But the way he meditates is he stands on his head. And that's like the first time we see... That's the first thing we see in the movie, is Swayze on his head meditating. I'm sure there are people in real life that meditate like that, but for a movie, it looks laughable. It looks ridiculous, him standing on his head. And then later on, he even tries to teach the kid to meditate that way. And I'm like, why is this the case? Just meditate like you see in most movies. They do it that way because it's less laughable. But, you know, your hero standing on his head, you're like, what? What was the point of this? I don't know. Another nitpick. Near the beginning, he's wandering around. He comes across this dog. And like, okay, you know, the dog, maybe he'll... No, that dog disappears until like the last 10 minutes of the film. So he's in like the first 10 minutes of the movie, and he's in the last 10 minutes of the movie. Between then, the dog must have taken, I don't know, a long piss or something, because he just disappeared. I don't understand it, but whatever. And then... So, I mean, that was a bit weird. I'm like, did they just have a dog in there because the Road Warrior had a dog? And funny enough, it's a black dog, considering Swayze would star in a film called Black Dog, which I reviewed. Fun little action film. I mean, the bits of action and Swayze do go a long way for this movie. I mean, I wouldn't say that the plot is the most interesting, dealing with irrigation farms, and, you know, the locations isn't the most intriguing, just being out there in the desert. Like I said, once in a while you get a shot that's decent, but it's not the most lavish production. You tell it's a low budget film. But I mean, you did like a nice little sequence where Swayze and Otto Vosloo are going towards each other in these little vehicles that kind of powered by the wind, carried by the wind, and Swayze jumps off at the right moment and spears Otto Vosloo's character and says a line like, "Told you shouldn't play with sharp objects." I like that little moment. That was fun. I said that the sword fight at the end is entertaining. Christopher Neame's character, the little bit I liked about his character was even though he's an evil guy, he wanted to kill Swayze on his own terms. So if someone tries to help him, he gets pissed. Even at the end, someone tries to attack Swayze, and Christopher Niemi like cuts the guy's neck, cuts his head off actually. He wants to do it on his own. I thought that was a nice little addition to the character that made it at least a little bit more interesting. Anthony Zerbe gets a knife thrown at his neck. That was a nice little moment. I know the movie was trying to be a little bit like Shane, trying to have that feel. But overall, I mean, I think it's a pretty decent little action flick. That idea, it doesn't have wall-to-wall action. Again, the love story didn't really interest me the most. But like I said, like Swayze does a good job. When the fight scenes are there, they're fun to watch. Especially the sword fight at the end. Wish the dog was in it more. Seemed like a neat dog. The familiar supporting characters like Brian James, again in a rare good guy role. He looks a little bit like Hulk Hogan with his blonde mustache and beard. Well, his blonde mustache, I should say. Just the way he looked, like his little goatee thing, he did look like Hogan. Anthony Zerbe, Christopher Niemi. It's a pretty decent flick. I don't know if this would be in my top 5 Swayze films, because I know Uncommon Valor would be on there, Ghost would be on there, Red Dawn would be on there, Roadhouse would be on there. I don't know if I would say I like this or Black Dog more. It's hard to pick. But yeah, if you're into movies, if you're into Swayze films, if you like Patrick Swayze, you've never seen it, if you're into post-apocalyptic movies that are reminiscent of The Road Warrior, this is definitely worth a look. I even like the look of his sword that he has. I thought it was kind of a cool looking sword. But it's a pretty decent flick. The DVD does have a making of from back in the day, which you can find on YouTube. Pretty much the only major feature on there. No commentaries, no new interviews. Because the movie's pretty forgotten. I don't think it deserves that fate. It's not nearly that bad of a film. I think it's a fun little flick. I mean, my favorite post-apocalyptic film is probably still Cyborg with Van Damme. I'm a sucker for that movie. Which, if you wonder why, feel free to watch my review. It's pretty damn lengthy. But either way, thanks for watching. Take care. And thanks to my friend Effrey for this very nice gift. Really do appreciate it. It says uncut, but that's mainly because overseas they cut everything. So their uncut is our regular cut. This is from I think Germany. But yeah, Steel Dawn. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.